Howdy folks, Timber Drifter here. This is a VR for the one and only Smokey Dan. He asks us to read a fairy tale, and my fairy tale is not the classic sort. I'm going to be reading from Robert Service today. This book was given to me by a friend of mine years ago, and these are the kind of poems that, a long time ago, or back in the first half of the last century, workmen and traveling men and seafaring men used to memorize and recite back before these damn things that I'm recording this video on took everyone's attention and we all lost our memories. But they would recite it for their own entertainment and the entertainment of those around them. And they have a certain rhythm that's it's very pleasant to hear. And it is the one I'm going to read is sort of a fairy tale. Sort of a fairy tale of the Yukon country, the gold rush era. So, anyway, give you a little bit of a look around. I'm just hanging out, sitting in the woods. Smoking some Prince Albert and an old Peterson. I've already got my tea brewed and just kind of keeping it warm while I do this video, and I got some bacon I'm going to cook, and when that's cooked I'll eat that and fry some potatoes in the grease. Alright. The Ballad of Blasphemous Bill by Robert Service. I took a contract to bury the body of blasphemous Bill Mackay, whenever, wherever, or whatsoever the manner of death he die. Wherever he die in the light of day or under the peak-faced moon, in a cabin or dance hall, camp or dive, mucklucks or patent shoon, on velvet tundra or virgin peak, by glacier, drift, or draw, in muskeg hollow or canyon gloom, by avalanche, fang, or claw, by battle, murder, or sudden wealth, by pestilence, hooch, or lead, I swore on the book I would follow and look till I found my tombless dead. For Bill was a dainty kind of cuss, and his mind was mighty sot on a dinky patch with flowers and grass and a civilized boneyard lot. And where he died or how he died, it didn't matter a damn, so long as he had a grave with frills and a tombstone epigram. So I promised him, and he paid the price in good Cheechako coin, which the same I blowed in that very night down in the Tenderloin. Then I painted a 3-foot slab of pine, here lies poor Bill Mackay, and I hung it up on my cabin wall, and I waited for Bill to die. Years passed away, and at last one day came a squaw with a story strange of a long deserted line of traps way up in the Bighorn Range. Of a little hut by the great divide and a white man stiff and still, lying there by his lonesome self, and I figured it must be Bill. So I thought of the contract I'd made with him, and I took down from the shelf the swell black box with the silver plate he'd picked out for hisself. Then I packed it full of grub and hooch, and I slung it on the sleigh. Then I harnessed up my team of dogs and was off at dawn of day. You know what it's like in the Yukon wild when it's 69 below, when the ice worms wriggle their purple heads through the crust of pale blue snow, when the pine trees crack like little guns in the silence of the wood, and the icicles hang down like tusks under parka hood, when the stovepipe smoke breaks sudden off and the sky is weirdly lit, and the careless feel of a bit of steel burns like a red-hot spit, when the mercury is a frozen ball and the frost fiend stalks to kill, well, it was just like that the day I set out to look for Bill. Oh, the awful hush that seemed to crush me down on every hand as I blundered blind with a trail to find through that blank and bitter land, half dazed, half crazed in the winter wild, with its grim, heartbreaking woes and the ruthless strife for a grip on life that only the sourdough knows. North by the compass, north I pressed, river and peak and plain, passed like a dream, and I slept to lose and waked to dream again. River and plain and mighty peak, and who could stand unawed? As their summits blazed, he could stand undazed at the foot of the throne of God. North, aye north, through a land accursed, shunned by the scouring brutes, and all I heard was my own harsh word and the whine of the Malamutes. Till at last I came to a cabin squat, built in the side of a hill, and I burst in the door, and there on the floor, frozen to death, lay Bill. Ice, white ice, like a winding sheet, sheathing each smoke-grimed wall, ice on the stovepipe, ice on the bed, ice gleaming over all, sparkling ice on the dead man's chest, glittering ice in his hair, ice on his fingers, and ice in his heart, and ice in his glassy stare. Hard as a log and trussed like a frog with his arms and legs outspread, I gazed at the coffin I'd brought for him, and I gazed at the gruesome dead, and at last I said, Bill liked his joke, but still, gall darn his eyes, a man ought to consider his mates in the way he goes and dies. Have you ever stood in the Arctic hut in the shadow of the pole, with a little coffin 6x3 and a grief you can't control? Have you ever sat by a frozen corpse that looks at you with a grin, and that seems to say, you may try all day, but you'll never jam me in? I'm not a man of the quitting kind, but I never felt so blue as I sat there gazing at that stiff and studying what I'd do. Then I rose and I kicked off the husky dogs that were nosing round about, and I lit a roaring fire in the stove, and I started to thaw Bill out. Well, I thawed and I thawed for 13 days, but it didn't seem no good. His arms and legs stuck out like pegs, as if they was made of wood. Till at last I said, it ain't no use, he's froze too hard to thaw. He's obstinate and he won't lie straight, so I guess I gotta saw. So I sawed off poor Bill's arms and legs, and I laid him snug and straight in the little coffin he'd picked hisself with the dinky silver plate. And I came nigh near to shedding a tear as I nailed him safely down. Then I stowed him away in my Yukon sleigh, and I started back to town. So I buried him, as the contract was, in a narrow grave and deep. And there he is, waiting the great clean-up when the judgment sluice heads sweep. And I smoke my pipe, and I meditate in the light of the midnight sun, and I wonder if they was the awful things I done. And I sit and the parson talks, expounding on the law. I often think of poor old Bill and how hard he was to saw. Well, there you go, Dan. Hope you liked it.